In this video, I will explain two types of logical fallacy, called appealing to the consequences and wishful thinking. I'll begin with a general explanation of the fallacy, followed by some examples of people using this fallacy. Hopefully, by the end of the video, you will be able to spot and deal with someone using these fallacies. The first fallacy is called appealing to the consequences. Remember that a fallacy is bad logic, a bad argument. Appealing to the consequences happens when someone attempts to claim the truth value of something based on the consequences of having that belief. More generally, if P, then G. Some proposition P leads to the consequence G. G is good, for some definition of good. The point is that if P is true, then this good thing G happens. Therefore P is true. P must be true because good things come from it. The conclusion here is fallacious. It doesn't matter how good the consequence is, it tells us nothing about whether P is true. The fallacy also occurs with negative consequences. Consider the following. If P, then B. B is bad, therefore P is false. P must be false because bad things come from it. The conclusion here is still fallacious. It doesn't matter how bad the consequence is, it tells us nothing about whether P is false. Ultimately, when we want to determine the truth value of something, whatever we happen to think about its consequences does not matter. Let's look at some examples. The Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. Believing in both of these leads to good things, namely money and presents. But the fact that you get a present does not mean that Santa Claus exists. Whether or not you get a present, this tells us nothing about the existence of Santa. Both of these outcomes, that is, getting a present and not getting a present, are logically possible with or without Santa. So if we are determining the truth regarding the existence of Santa, then the presence of a present is not useful, even if it is good. The Tooth Fairy is another interesting example. Again, the fact that you get money should not lead you to believe that the fairy exists. There is one final point to make on the Tooth Fairy. With Santa Claus, we assume that naughty children do not get a present, but the Tooth Fairy makes no such distinction. If we assume this to be the case, then we can actually use modus tollens to show that the Tooth Fairy does not exist. For more on modus tollens and the fallacy of asserting the antecedent, see my video in the link above. The second fallacy in this video is called wishful thinking. It is very similar to the fallacy of appealing to the consequences. Wishful thinking happens when someone attempts to claim the truth value of something based on their desires. More generally, I want P to be true. I have a desire for P to be true. Therefore P is true. P must be true because I want it to be true. Of course, this also happens for things that are unwanted. I want Q to be false. I don't like Q, I want it to be false. Therefore Q is false. Q must be false because I want it to be false. The conclusions here are fallacious. Whether you want something to be true or false plays no part in whether that thing is actually true or false. An obvious example of wishful thinking is playing the lotto. You may want to win the jackpot, you may even have bought a ticket, but this does not mean that you will win. And when you don't win, it is not because of a lack of desire on your part. Wanting the Earth to be flat does not mean that it actually is, because desire has no bearing on the actual truth value of a proposition. Another interesting example is the placebo effect. Taking a pill, not knowing it is a placebo, but genuinely wanting the pill to fix whatever medical problem you happen to have. The pill may fix you, it may have no effect, or it may make you even worse. Your desire for the pill to fix you has no bearing on whether it actually does fix you. Well, that concludes the video. The next time someone makes this mistake, politely point out their mistake. Don't be distracted by consequences or desires that sound nice. Assess the truth value of the proposition from what is relevant.